everyone. I'm Maritza Barone and welcome to my podcast, Things You Can't Unhear. As a presenter with a focus on wellness, I have interviewed many health professionals in my time and heard stories that have opened my eyes about the world we live in today. But I found the best bits that I take home with me and the things I heard that have changed my life are usually when the recording shuts off and we can talk in length behind the scenes. And that's the information that I want to share with you on this podcast. In today's episode of the show, I have Sarah Holloway with me. She's the founder of the well-known wellness brand Matcha Maiden and trailblazing plant-based cafe called Matcha Mylkbar. The former lawyer is now an entrepreneurial speaker, podcast creator of Seize the Yay, and has her own forum called Spoonful of Sarah, where she shares her daily journeys and helps people to find their inner potential. And if you haven't already noticed, she's also a fan of playful puns.
I love a good pun.
You do. You do really well at it, actually. It's very, very catchy. Have you always been really creative?
Yeah, I have actually. I think since I was a little kid, I'd always be drawing or dancing or singing or trying to learn, how to play an instrument. I always had that side of me that just loved. It's like I always describe it as being equal parts arty-farty and nerdburger. So there was like a really booky, nerdy side, and then there was the total dancing, crazy muso side as well. And I think through phases of my life, one or the other has been more dominant. But I love what I get to do now because it kind of unites both of them.
Yeah, and you can constantly create. When you have your own brand like that, you can absolutely constantly keep creating and inspiring the people around you. And it's very, very exciting. So we're in the studio today, which is cool because both of us, a lot of the time, we just podcast from our homes.
So I'm just looking at the setup like, wow. This is so fancy.
Massive panel of buttons and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screens. It's pretty intenso, but we've managed to.
I literally usually just have a record button that's like on and off. That's the extent of the controls that I have. So this is amazing.
High tech today. So hopefully it sounds amazing for everybody. Now, just to give our listeners a bit of a breakdown of your background, tell us how your adventure started with Matcha Mylkbar and Matcha Maiden.
Yeah, goodness, it's a bit of a crazy story. So I started off on a very traditional career path. I studied really hard at school to get into law and then studied really hard in law to get into a really good law firm. And then I ended up getting into a great international law firm to kind of start my career. And I don't necessarily think I wanted to be a lawyer forever because I did know that I always had this creative side, but I definitely wasn't looking to leave very early. I wasn't super unhappy or anything. I started my career really steep learning curve, learned a lot about business and markets and just learned how to be an adult and like what the world was all about. But it was, a happy accident that we discovered our business and entrepreneurial flair. I spent a month in Rwanda, actually, in Africa, building schools through the charity that my partner Nick has a creative agency, and he'd been doing a lot of the digital for a big campaign that was supporting this community. So we got to spend a month there. And it was, as you can imagine, an incredibly transformative experience. But unfortunately, I came home with a parasite. And being completely out of touch at the time with my bodily functions and like wellness, I had no idea. I went straight back to work, ignored all the signs, straight back to crazy hours, eating at my desk, and I just kept losing weight. I think I lost 15 kilos, totally burnt myself into the ground.
And you're tiny now.
Yeah, I'm quite slender naturally, so didn't have that to lose. The first 2 kilos, I was like, great way to lose pounds. And then it just kept coming off, and I was like, wow, this is not, you don't even notice until like now looking back, I'm like, wow, it was really extreme. But I just couldn't see it. I just kept working until the point where my body it wouldn't get up out of bed one day. And that was when I realized, I'd given myself adrenal fatigue. My whole body was just completely fragile and vulnerable, and I hadn't given it any of the right fuel, so I was banned from coffee. And at the time I was working like 20-hour days. I was like, I'm a 10 cups a day kind of girl. How am I going to survive without coffee? But I got sent to Hong Kong with that's where the firm's headquarters were, to work on a big deal over there. And in Asia, matcha is kind of not the buzzword that it is in the West. It's been around for centuries and people have been using it as an alternative source of caffeine for many, many years. So I realized over there that there was a way to get caffeine, so it's about half the amount of caffeine as coffee, but it also has a unique amino acid in it called L-theanine, which makes it slow release into your bloodstream. So instead of getting, a real spike of energy but then a crash afterwards, it's a much more slow burn and much more gentle on your body and your adrenals. So I was, having a cup a day and then 2 cups a day, and I was still able to sleep, and it wasn't having that jittery effect that coffee would have on my heart rate and everything. And I slowly got better, put the weight back on, but then couldn't kick the matcha addiction that I'd developed over there. My partner, Nick, came over. He got hooked on it and was using it, as a pre and post workout. And then we came home, and even though the health food market was booming and everyone was drinking green smoothies everywhere, no one had really made matcha a thing. And it was, everywhere in the States, and people had heard of it, but no one was making it available in, an easy, accessible format. So there was no cool brand that was online. You could go to very, very obscure, specific stores to find it, but it wasn't on health food shelves.
Yeah.
And we really, it was like such a selfish endeavor. We just wanted it for ourselves.
Yeah, that's how these things come about.
Totally.
Though. Life throws you a curveball and you're like, hang on, I can see the potential in how this can help others.
Yeah.
Do you feel as though in your life you haven't? I've had an episode that I posted recently on my podcast about planning our futures. And to me, this sort of feels like you fell into it a lot, and
Absolutely.
you were guided into it almost, and you saw an opportunity and you ran with it. Is that how it worked?
Absolutely. And I think that's one thing now that I really try and share to people is that, life these days is so fast, and the typical one career for your whole life, it's just not the model anymore. So you do have to be really open-minded. And I think if you are that and you're ready for things to just come at you and you're willing to take opportunities, it can lead you to places that you never imagined even existed. So I used to be a person who had a 5 and a 10-year plan, and now I'm like, it's actually okay to have a 5-minute plan and not know what's coming next, because if you're too planned, you almost preclude yourself from exploring anything different. You're shutting out opportunities before you even know what they are. So this one fell out of absolutely nowhere. Like, had no idea that this was, on the horizon. And it was literally because we went online and we ended up finding a really good supplier that was organic and, it was good quality, but it was also affordable, and they could only sell it in bulk. And that's literally the only reason we decided to sell it, was because it arrived and it was way too much for 2 people. There was so much powder.
Wow.
And we're like, shit.
Even that's a happy coincidence.
Totally.
Like, it all just fell into place. And it's almost like it's conscious life planning. Like, if you get everything in your life right, all the other elements, and you know who you are and you know where you're sort of going as a human, then I think everything else, career and business-wise, just tends to fall into place.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's so exciting. So you were pretty much first to market with Matcha in Australia.
Yeah.
And then you've taken it global.
Yes. So at the time, you could get it in really specialist tea shops, but it was, ceremonial grade, so too expensive to use as a health food product. Or you could get it in Asian groceries with sugar or other additives that kind of, defeated the health benefits. So no one was doing that middle ground, daily use superfood kind of thing. And that's exactly how we pitched it, because that's exactly how we were using it. So we did, a launch on social media. Nick has a creative agency, which is really handy. So he could knock up, our website, do all the design, the logos. I think we did it in a weekend, and then we packed all the bags ourselves. And you said we took it global. It kind of just went global. Like,
see, that's amazing, because so many people, and I'd love you to sort of give other people advice, because so many people have these amazing ideas and they get sort of stuck in a little rut, and they don't know how to push it forward. And there's so many people out there that I'm talking to lately. The more we start to have this conversation, how do we, in your opinion, find that little push to keep going, or something to even just start once we found that passion in our lives?
Yes. So that's, again, the Seize the A podcast came out of that idea of realizing all anyone needs is a little push in the right direction. Often you'll be sitting on an idea for years and years, and you just need someone to tell you it's okay. So I think the big thing that helped us was that we didn't have a 5-year plan. We literally just focused on how do we sell one bag. And I think it's all about kind of, sounds so weird, but it's about dream management. Like you do have a big dream of taking it global and, all that, and that's really exciting, but you don't focus on the end game because it's too big. You have to just focus on what's the first step to get there. And if we break things down into baby steps, it's not as scary. Everything is a mind game. And if you're too overwhelmed or too scared, you're not going to start. Whereas if you just play it, scale it back a little bit to, I just want to sell 1 bag or 5 bags or 10 bags or whatever your product is, or I want 1 client or 2, you start from the ground up and grow into your dream. It doesn't all happen overnight, even though it looks that way. And the less, the less you agonize and the more you just start. One thing I always say is done is better than perfect. And I think we sit on ideas and wait until it's the perfect time or until we've done all our research or until everything is perfect. But again, if you just put something out in the market, what you thought is perfect is probably not what the market wants anyway. So until you get it out there, you're not going to get feedback on what everyone wants. The best thing you can do is, get a minimum viable product and then just release it, because every product that comes out gets refined. We've changed our bags and labels so many times since we started, but we wouldn't have known how to do that until people had said, we want it bigger, we want it smaller, we want it matte, or we want it gloss, that kind of stuff. You can figure it out as you go along. You don't start with 1 million customers. So really just get it out there. Just start before you're ready. You will figure it out along the way.
That is such good advice, because for so many people, starting is the problem. And I think it is great, in my opinion, I think it is great to have that end goal in your head so you know where your direction is heading and where you want to end up. But as you said, it can get overwhelming and can just actually make you not
paralyze you.
Yeah, it can make you completely paralyzed and not do anything about it. I'm one of those people who takes forever to actually action, so I'm trying to change. But I think it's about, and I think you'd agree with me, it's about getting out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
Is that something that you've done a lot in your life?
Yes. So it's a hard one because, I came from a background where I thought I was getting out of my comfort zone all the time, but really I was still in the same industry that I'd been at uni for 7 years to prepare for. So even my steepest learning curves in law were still familiar, and I think I was quite risk averse. I was really conservative because that's what we were trained to do. But if you surround yourself with people who are on board with where you want to be, I think you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And my partner, Nick, is the opposite. He's never been conventional. He's never had a conventional job. And he was such a positive influence on kind of shifting me from that risk-averse, planned out mind space and moving me into just do it, just get it out there, just be uncomfortable. And it did take a while to take a big step, but once I did, now I'm a discomfort junkie. I'm like, I'm not learning if I'm not uncomfortable. So he's really, and other people who are in business who I've, been lucky to be around have really encouraged me to seek that discomfort, to step outside and do big, scary things, because then they're not scary anymore. Like as soon as you do it, you'll find the next thing and the next thing. And I think you're never going to learn when you're just feeling comfortable and coasting. And sometimes you've earned that. Sometimes you've got other stuff going on in your life and it's not the right time for growth or it's not the right time for something new. But sometimes you're totally ripe for a new challenge and you're in control of that. You're in control of, putting yourself out there and letting your dreams, giving them the chance to come to life, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm even teaching my kids that at the moment. I've got one daughter who is struggling with confidence at the moment. And I said to her, okay, let's just choose one thing to do each day that's going to get you in front of someone or to talk to someone and be more confident. So she's started a little log. It's so cute. And she's like, I spoke to someone today at the shops and so even I'm trying to teach my kids that so that they don't have to unlearn it like we all did when we grow up.
Yeah, I think you need to shed the fear of looking silly, shed the fear of being bad at something and not being prepared or, I went from being so not overqualified, but infinitely qualified for what I was doing. I'd trained for so long to do it. I had so many resources around me to jumping into an industry I had absolutely no clue, no mentor, no resources, no anything. And you just have to be okay with that. Like we're in a day and age where it is a small business world. We're not expected to have one job for the rest of our lives. In this country, we're very lucky. There's no recession, there's no GFC, there's no war, there's no reason why you can't just try something new. I mean, there's not a lot of risk in these things. Like I always like bring it back to what's the worst that could happen. And particularly with, in tech businesses, it's a little bit different where you need to drop like $500,000, but most businesses you can start really small.
The worst thing that can happen is not doing it.
Yeah.
Because you're not living your dream.
Exactly. The worst thing you can do is just sit and exist.
Yeah.
And just live a life that's all should. It's I'm doing this because I should. And you're just like churning through the days, not exploring your true potential and not living your life.
Yeah.
And I really, really am always at pains to say that my particular journey was leaving corporate to start a business. For some people it isn't. For some people it's changing jobs within a business, or it's changing industries, or it's applying for a promotion. And for other people, their joy or their yay, as I call it, it might not even be in their job. It might be starting an instrument outside of their job. But whatever it is, I think you need to go and find something that lights you up and not just coast, not just get up every day to do the same thing, to just be at the same level, because that's just so not rewarding. It's not exciting. And everyone has so much potential in something. It's just a matter of finding it.
Yeah. You want to get up and bounce out of that bed and say, yes, today this is what I'm doing and I'm so excited to do it, rather than just the motions of everyday life over and over again. And then 10 years later wake up and go, oh my God, where did that 10 years go? And what have I done? So, I'm on the same page. Do you have any coaches or mentors in your life that are really instrumental to your success?
Yeah, that's been a really hard one, because I think in corporate I had such a clear hierarchy of who I would go to for what, and it was such a supported environment. You never felt like you didn't have 7 people who were checking your work, or helping you learn or filling in the gaps for you. And then to move into business, everyone's doing their own thing, so there aren't really clear people who are leaders ahead of you, because the industry changes every 5 seconds as well. So most of the time no one's done what you're doing, or not exactly what you're doing. So I spent a long time looking for the mentor. It's like, I need a mentor. I need one person to go to for everything, because you want that security. But what I've found is it actually works better and more practically for you to have just a strong network of people for different things. So I've got, a person I'll go to for finance, a person I'd go to for marketing, a person I would go to for personal life, a coach that I would go to. You kind of have different people that fill all the gaps of all the different things that you need. And again, that also changes almost every year, because your business gets to a new phase. So rather than looking for that one person to fill the gap, and also because most people are too busy to commit to that anyway, I feel like just networking as broadly and as widely as you can, and having a few key people in your network, that tends to work best for everyone, like for them as well, because it's not a huge commitment of their time. So I've got maybe 5 or 6 key people that I've developed really lovely relationships with. But then also business networking groups or common interest groups are really helpful. So Business Chicks is an amazing one for meeting other people. League of Extraordinary Women. There's so much support out there that even if you're out on your own, as long as you can get over how silly you feel going somewhere by yourself, which I think is really important in business. You just have to get over the fact that you're going to
comfort zone again.
Yeah, you're going to have to get over looking silly just walking up to a stranger. If you can get over that, you'll make some amazing relationships. And all of the best relationships and the most useful and rewarding that I have now are from weird moments where I've been like, I want to go talk to that person. I feel like a total dick, but I'm going to go up to them anyway and just introduce myself and see what happens.
Creating a community is so important. And you know what? People are out there and they do want to help other people.
Absolutely.
If you just ask for help, most of the time people are going to say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always say if you don't ask, it's a no.
Well, that's true.
It's automatically a no. So what's to lose? Like, I guess a lot of us are hung up on that, not wanting to look silly or not dealing with rejection very well. But if you get over it and realize a no is it's not a reflection of you. It's literally just they might not have time, but on the off chance they might say yes, it's always worth asking, because the way that the community tends to work as well is people will help you who you can never repay in the same way, because they're so much further ahead of you. But the implicit understanding in the industry is that then you will pass that on to other people, and there's this kind of pay it forward mentality of someone is always helping you and they expect that you'll help the next new person when you've moved on. And you're just constantly paying it forward. People are always willing to help because someone helped them when they were new.
Yeah.
So, and you never know. They never know that when you do grow big, you might have something that they need. So I think always ask.
Absolutely. So if people came to you and said, how do I find what my passion is? Do you have a bit of a formula for that? Because I heard something yesterday that was an eye-opening for me, and I went to a launch of a new show called Behind the Sash, and it's about sending.
Oh,
It's about these women who are doing humanitarian work, and it's sort of like behind the scenes of a beauty pageant, but it's Australian, and it's going to be on Channel 10 later this year. And
I met the producers a couple of weeks ago. Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, she stood up there. Her name was Danielle, and she stood up there and she said the way that I tell people to find their purpose is to find that meeting point between what your passion is and what your pain is. And it's right there in between that. And I was like, you just hit the nail on the head for me, because for her pain was seeing people experience homelessness and out in the streets and struggle with life. And her passion was also media and entertainment. So she's got this middle ground now where she can have these two meeting points and create her purpose. So that was a really clear definition for me on how to find your purpose.
Yeah.
Do you have something that you say to people when they ask you about finding their purpose?
Yeah, it's such a hard one, and it's always such a personal journey. You never know what's going to spark, you never know which experience or where you're going to be when something just clicks in your mind that you realize, But I think one thing that really helped me is firstly understanding that you might not just wake up one day and realize it's hard work to figure out what you like. You actually have to put a bit of time and effort into it. It's like any project. You might have to take notes. It might take you years to figure it out, but one thing that really helped me is, literally when I left the law firm, I didn't have any spare time. I hadn't put any time into my joy or even investigating who I was outside of being a lawyer. So I didn't know what I liked. And I was like, well, I can't find my passion if I don't even know what I enjoy to begin with. So the best thing that I would suggest is write down, when you notice that you're having a really good time, write down what activities you're doing. When you notice that you forget what time it is, write down what you were doing, and do it over a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and then go back and you'll notice the things or the themes that kind of pop up. And it's like, usually, you'll be able to see if it's creative things, or you'll be able to see if it's tactile things using your hands, or you'll be able to see if it's mathematical things. Themes you almost have to observe yourself as a scientific experiment. And then you start to be able to tie that back to what you were like as a child, because that's really instructive as well. Where does your brain go when you're not forcing it to go anywhere? And that's how I started to piece it together, realizing that the things that lit me up the most were the creative things, and they were the things I hadn't been doing for years. Right. And it took, another couple of months and maybe even a year for me to actually realize that it was a combination of creativity and people. But it took me a year to figure that out. You think you know yourself, but it actually takes a lot of work to get to know yourself if you're not there already. And I think keep a journal, notice things about yourself, make a commitment to notice when you're happy, and write it down, and then
brilliant.
Piece the pieces together.
Oh, that is brilliant. That's such good. I hadn't heard that before. That is really good advice. And I think when we define people these days, it's always about our biggest achievements or what our jobs are. And I think defining ourselves is by the things that we enjoy doing and the way that we act and what we like to listen to or read or, those types of things. Those behavioural things are who we are, not what job we have or what we do for a living.
And the other thing that's really hard is it's hard to separate what you're good at with what you like, because you can be really good at something and think then, well, I should do it because I'm good at it. But for some people, their best skill is something they really dislike or it doesn't light them up at all. And, you get graced with all these talents and abilities, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to enjoy using all of them. Yeah. So I think that method of writing things down and looking at them objectively helps you separate whether you're enjoying something because you're good at it or whether you're enjoying it because you actually enjoy it.
Yeah. And you know what? As you said earlier, things can change. You can do something for 5 years and go, okay, now I'm ready for a change. That served its purpose and now I'm ready for a change. So I think that's great. Now, obviously business comes with its stresses, and you've been very open to talking about how you deal with your anxiety that flares up, and it's not probably only from business but just from life in general. I'm also a bit of an anxiety sufferer since my teens, on and off. So can you tell us how you manage your anxiety and sort of what tools you have for others who might learn from your experiences?
It's quite a new journey for me, actually. It only really flared after the parasite. So
Right.
once my body kind of got literally to rock bottom, it flared everything. It flared, glandular issues. It flared my digestion issues, and anxiety was one of the things that came out of it. And it's gone through phases of really severe panic attacks, like socially crippling, exhausting, running to the bathroom, getting stuck in there for hours. And then on other days or other phases or months, for months long sometimes, it'll just be a more dull daily clench in the stomach, or, it really varies in its severity. And I think the first little while when you are realizing that you are suffering something that's actually anxiety and not just stress, I think there's a difference. That's when, at the beginning it's really overwhelming. I had no idea. I'd never had it before. I didn't know what it was caused by. I didn't know how to manage it. I didn't know what it was, or I always thought that people who had anxiety were just stressed.
Yeah,
and
not the same.
I think
is
it's
it?
very misunderstood. I'd always just be like, well, just rest or something. But you realize when you have it that resting doesn't do anything. If it's there, it's there, and there's not a lot you can do in the moment to kind of relieve it. But like anything, and exactly the same as finding your passion, I think keeping a journal was one of the best things I could do, because it's a whole process of getting to know a new side of you. You have to learn when it flares and look at what you were doing at the time in that month or in that, few weeks. Learn when it feels better, learn the things that really impact it and that don't. I've managed to kind of figure out that sleep is a really big one for me. It flares when I haven't been getting enough sleep. It's a lot more manageable when I have been getting enough sleep. Things like events that are very outward focused and lots of physical, and emotional stimulation and being really high energy, that is what lights me up. I absolutely adore it. But if I do it too many days in a row without a day of just quiet time and stillness, then I'll have some kind of panic attack at the end. So, and that again, it's the process of deduction. It took me maybe 7 times of that happening before I realized it was a pattern, and then realized I had to tweak my routine to kind of fit around it. So it's been a lot of trial and error, because everyone's anxiety manifests differently and it's triggered by different things. Sometimes it's not even triggered by anything. Sometimes
it just pops up and you're like, where did you come from? Why
sometimes
are you
it's
ruining
your
my day
cycle.
now?
Like sometimes it's your period, or sometimes you really, it's hard to sometimes even know if it was triggered by anything, and sometimes it just hits you and you've just got to go with it. But I think 2 things that have really, really helped me. One is a therapist. I think if it's really interfering with your life enjoyment and your interactions with people, then absolutely go and see someone, because they can help you so much with just an expert opinion on your triggers, or on how to manage it better, or on how it's manifesting. You're not expected to navigate all that by yourself. We're not neuroscientists.
Exactly.
There's absolutely no shame in it. And they just help so much. They really, my psychologist I still see fortnightly, and it just helps me map out everything in my brain and work backwards as well to figure out how to just keep it at bay, and make sure that it's never getting, I'm never, doing the wrong thing to flare it up, and also that it's never getting too much to handle. And then the other thing is just listening to your body. So listen very, very carefully to when it feels good and when it doesn't, and what you've been doing at those times, and then just work around it. It's kind of like anything. I think you can still live an enormously exciting and stimulating life and manage anxiety. It's not the end of your life.
I'm so glad that you said, and you're open to saying and sharing, that you see a psychologist because or psychiatrist, because many years ago people would just be sort of feel the shame and the stigma of seeing a person or a therapist. And the more we talk about it, the more open with it, I think the better it is for everyone.
I think we just need to normalize things like that, because it's more common than it's ever been, because our lives are faster than they've ever been. So, of course, the mental kind of backlash from how connected we are, of course, it's going to happen somewhere. Our bodies haven't had enough time to adjust to that. And then there's, even if it's not environmentally affected, some people are just born with brain chemistry that's going to cause, big disruptions. And I kind of think of it, someone once said to me something that really changed my approach to it, which was, you wouldn't not manage a heart condition.
That's
right?
true.
If you had a lifelong heart condition, you would just manage it. You'd learn. You wouldn't lock yourself in a room and be like, well, I can't ever do exercise, or I can't do anything that raises my heart rate. You'd go and see someone, you'd get a plan, and then you'd figure out how to live your life around it. So even though it's not visible, you don't have visible symptoms, it's all in your mind. If you treat it like a physical thing to work around, then suddenly it's not so bad. It's like, oh, it's just my brain needs a little bit more help. So I go the same way I would go to a heart specialist. I go to a psychologist. She helps me work a plan around so I can still have a really rewarding life. And then I just manage it. Like it's like managing asthma, or it's like managing anything. It's just something that you like take into your stride and work around it. It's so achievable.
Do you get physical symptoms from anxiety? What do they feel like?
Yeah, so I didn't ever understand it as a physiological thing until a couple of years ago when I had my first panic attack, and they feel like a heart attack. I genuinely thought, I called an ambulance actually the first time, because I was like, your heart rate goes so fast, you can almost see your heartbeat coming out of your neck. My arms go numb. Like, it was so physiological that I thought it couldn't be anxiety, because anxiety is emotional, obviously. It's in my brain. It's not, a thing, but my temperature changes, I was sweating, I was like shivering, my teeth started to chatter, it was really physical. And that's, at an extreme level. On a more, a dull anxiety kind of day, it's a very clenched in the stomach feeling, kind of like, it's really hard to explain, but the way that I explain it is, imagine someone called you and said, something's happened to one of your loved ones, but they didn't give you any information. They just said, something's happened, we can't tell you anything else, and they hang up the phone. In between that call and the next call, the feeling that you've got is just this weird, dull, like everything clenches.
On edge.
And you don't know, it's not related to anything because you don't know what the news is, but you know something bad has happened. It's almost like that. It's just like that, but all day. You're just in this suspended sense of like something's going to happen. Your stomach's clenched as if like you're really nervous or something, but it's not related to anything.
Even now talking about it, I'm starting
you kind
to
of get it.
But I get a tightness in my chest. I can just feel like my chest is, squeezing together, and I just sort of need to stretch it out and take some deep breaths in order to relax that area of my body. And I think it all it presents in all of us so differently. So it's good to talk about how it presents in others. So I think, the more awareness, the better. So how do you fill your own cup these days? You're obviously a very busy woman and, you're very mindful too. So it's good to know that you're making this effort to work on yourself. So you obviously have methods to fill your own cup. How do you do it?
Oh, gosh, it is definitely a work in progress. I think if there's anything that I haven't managed as well as I have with everything else, it's been how to not sacrifice myself too much and not work too hard, because I love what I do. It's when you find your passion, it's almost worse because then you never want to stop. So I think I push the boundaries a lot, but I am working a lot harder on making sure that I fill my cup. One of the things that just in the last year or so I've really started to understand about myself is that I present as an extrovert, and I think a lot of people identify this. I present as an extrovert because I really love being around people, but I'm actually an introvert in terms of when I need to recharge, I need to do that alone. So even though I thrive off outward interactions, I need to be alone in between. So one way of filling my cup is just having days to myself. It's, Nick and I work and live together. So sometimes it's hard for us to get enough space to just not even just with each other, have some space from each other. So little things that I do, if I'm traveling to Sydney for a speaking gig or something, I'll book an extra night and just have one night where I've got nothing. I've got nothing planned. I'll have a bath. I'll read a book. I'll get a massage. Massage is something that I find helps physiologically with my symptoms because it actually releases tension from your muscles. So I used to think I was so indulgent and I'd feel so bad if I paid money on a massage. Whereas now I'm like, nothing works better for me. So once a month, sometimes even more, I get a massage. And that's that's a full hour where I can't touch my devices or anything.
We shouldn't ever feel guilty about spending money on our health, though. And that's something my husband's been drumming into my head for years. He's like, go join the gym, go do that. That's where you need to spend your money. You never feel guilty about that stuff. And I totally agree with him now. It took me a while to get there as well.
It takes a while, doesn't it, to let go of it. But I think obviously there's simple things of looking after yourself, like exercise, eating well, sleeping enough. But what I've really, and this is why the CZA podcast came about, was I think that's still, all of that is still you trying to achieve something. So even though exercise is, your own quiet time, I'm still doing it to get fit or to stay strong. There's still an end game. It's still very alpha and very yang, you're still trying to achieve something. So what I need to do to fill my cup, because I get way too overexcited about everything, and even at the gym I'm like, I need to just do nothing. I need to do things that are totally pointless, that have no learning objective, that have no time limit, that have no output or outcome or productivity, that aren't success driven, that aren't achieving. So I just let myself indulge in crime fiction books, podcasts, Netflix.
Yep.
I garden, I do puzzles, those are the things. Or I'll sit in the bath and not take anything in there. So not read a book or not just sit.
Look at the ceiling.
Yeah, just stare. And
watch the bubbles pop.
It's really uncomfortable. People think that quiet time has to be relaxing. It's not relaxing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, I really want to be doing something, but it's that fidgetiness that you have to push through because otherwise you never come down from that like intense stimulation.
True. Yeah.
So yeah, filling my cup is learning to do activities that are just for joy.
Lovely. Now, I want to talk about your podcast a bit more, actually. Seize the Yay. I really love that. I think we started our podcast for similar reasons, actually, because you found in your work that you were meeting people, but the deeper conversations were coming, once your live talk finished or once the filming finished. And that was exactly the same thing for me. Tell us about the podcast and how much joy it's brought you, because I know we were talking about how much joy my podcast has brought me earlier before we started recording.
Oh, gosh, it's just been the best thing I've done. I love it so much, and I think it did come about as a side effect of my own realization that even though I'd found my passion and even though I'd left my job to work in that passion, even that can get too much for you. You still need to do things that maybe you're passionate about, but that aren't your job. You need to do things that aren't work. And none of us leave enough time for that stuff. And if we do, we never ask people about that. We always say, hi, I'm Sarah. What do I do? We don't ever say what we like. We introduce ourselves and put people in, boxes based on their jobs.
Yep.
So the whole idea came about to investigate what it is that people do that is for cultivating themselves as a person that's not a worker, that's not a mum, that's not in any of those brackets. It's just them for their joy, for their play. And so the sections are way TA, which is how you got there, and then nay TA, which is all the shit behind the scenes that never gets airtime, because that's where people become relatable and that's where their message really, gets in.
Yeah.
And then the last segment is play TA, which is what do you do that is unrelated to anything achievement-y or success-y or, all the things all the buzzwords we talk about in society. That's only half a person, and yet we we let it take up 90% of our lives or more, and people don't leave any time for yay or joy or for keeping their inner child alive. We get so bogged down in being busy and productive and achieving and what's the next goal. And I love that we're a gold digger society. Goal digger, not gold digger.
Gold digger.
Yeah, that we're boss babes kicking goals. I love that. It's so exciting. But there's not really a culture to allow us to slow down from that when we need to and just be still.
I think people are waking up to it slowly, inch by inch. And it's a beautiful concept. You've had some huge names on your show.
Yeah.
Who are some of your standouts? Let's bring to mind right now. I know it's hard to choose.
So many. I had Jacinta Franklin on just this week, a couple of days ago.
That was gorgeous.
And she's just beautiful. And she's one of those people who has, part of her filling her cup is keeping more privacy probably than the average person who has a really big profile. So it was so much fun because I hadn't heard much of her on podcasts or in interviews, and it was lots of new information and lots of letting a warmth radiate out that I didn't necessarily know that she had, because we don't see much of the behind the scenes. And then I've had Barney and Kata Miller are this incredible couple who just they're spectacular human beings. Barney became a complete C6 quadriplegic after a car accident, was never meant to be able to breathe by himself again. But his journey has been, he's so determined that he's back as a world adaptive surf champion. He knelt to propose to Kata. He stood to dance at the altar at their wedding. It's just stuff that just makes you really appreciate human determination, and that if he can laugh, and if they can laugh and find joy and find play in their lives, then the rest of us really can.
Yeah.
Stories that
inspiring.
And there's just been so many amazing people.
Well, we're going to have to listen. I haven't listened to that one. I'm definitely going to tune in. How important do you think it is for us to be vulnerable with our voice?
So important. I think these days, the average consumer or the average listener is a bit more savvy because there is so much more information out there. If you want to be able to connect with people and really relate to them, the polished together version of yourself is not really going to be able to penetrate a message the same way the vulnerable you is, because we're all human. Like Eve, and the podcast has taught me that every single person is as crazy in the brain as I am.
It doesn't matter how famous they are or how
no one is
well
together.
achieved they are.
But if they only present the polished side of themselves, it's very hard to listen to what they have to say because you don't relate. You're like, but you're perfect, so you don't know what I'm talking about. But vulnerability is where people really can connect with you, and that's where you can change people's lives. I think you can really, by you showing a bit of yourself that's, the less glamorous side or the tough, nitty-gritty, difficult stuff, that's where people can relate and go, oh, well, then I really identify with that journey. So whatever she has to say is probably something I should listen to. So, and also for ourselves being vulnerable, whether it helps someone else or not, which it obviously does, but for ourselves, that's where we can really find the way to heal that vulnerability or to learn from it or to progress to the next level. I think that's when, people get really sick is when they don't acknowledge their vulnerabilities or they don't acknowledge that something's not right. They just brush everything past. I don't want to feel feelings,
Just squash it down.
Yeah, it goes somewhere. You never get away with not addressing your vulnerabilities.
Yep, so get it out there, people.
Yeah.
Get it out. Get it out of your body.
And it makes you human, I think you meet the most amazing people through sharing your tougher experiences.
Absolutely. Well, I have the feeling that there's going to be a lot more than just a spoonful of you. I think there's going to be like a swimming pool of Sarah. What's next for you? What do you have up your sleeve that you're excited about and can you share?
Yes. So, oh my gosh, the biggest thing is actually our wedding. We're getting married in 3.5 months, and this has been a really hard transition for me, not in our relationship, but it's been hard for me to slow down and really commit at the start of this year to not letting the year pass me by, because we do that every year. For 5 years we've worked together, and for 5 years we've skipped date nights, we've skipped holidays, we've just been work. And this year is the year that we're getting married. We can't rock up on the day and have missed the whole process. We can't get there and be exhausted. We can't be just like, oh shit, it's tomorrow, let's go. We want to enjoy every single part of it and really kind of make space to be at all the appointments and spend 5 hours on Pinterest looking at flower arrangements. And, and that's hard because neither of us like to rest and neither of us like to not be productive. So the whole of this year has been hard to not have new projects in all the businesses. I'm always like, new ideas, I want to do new things. But we want to take October off. We want to have our wedding and then have a honeymoon and really enjoy the whole process. So the newest thing on my cards is not having a new thing on the horizon and just enjoying the wedding.
And just enjoy what success that you've come across now and what you've built, and take that step back and just go, I'm going to enjoy it and look back and be quite proud of myself. And
and that we gave ourselves that time, because especially when you work together, every moment that you work harder, you see the results of, and every minute that you don't work, you see things slow down. But making a decision that, we can't just say that we appreciate work-life balance. We actually have to do the work-life balance and make boundaries and put a cutoff time of start of October, it's the 25th of October. The start of October has to be the last time that we do a new release or a new, we really have to make that space, because space doesn't just appear in your schedule, you know.
You need to make it.
Yeah, and brain space as well. It doesn't just appear, and we're very prone to not stopping to celebrate the wins. It's hard to do that because you want to use the momentum to bring out the new thing.
Yeah.
So we're the worst at going, oh my God, that launch was really successful. New thing.
Yeah.
But this time
celebrate it for a minute.
Yeah, we want to celebrate. We've earned a position in the market where, if we don't work for one day, nothing's going to happen. But you get so scared that,
you'll become great advice.
You'll become irrelevant if you stop for one day, But I think, we're 5 years in. It's okay to take a little bit of time off and just be a couple instead of business partners.
Now, I'd like to end on my podcast with a bit of a pay it forward situation.
Yes.
So, who inspires you in your life that you think my listeners might get joy out of hearing from, and perhaps be a guest on my podcast one day?
Oh my gosh.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
So many
I know, you're
people.
how many? Get a pen. How many do you want?
Oh my gosh. I'll get back to you with a list. You'll have a whole dossier portfolio on all the people. I think paying it forward is so important, and giving shout outs to other people is so important. Someone who's been an incredible inspiration to me on my journey is Nat Warner from Green Street Juice. She was, a fellow ex-lawyer who left just before I wanted to leave and who was moving into the same industry. And, has the most uncorruptible moral compass that I think is probably, in terms of, we were talking about mentors before, it's not as hard to find people who will give you advice on business or marketing or money or finance or whatever, but to get people who will give you moral guidance when you're in a moral dilemma, it's hard to know who aligns exactly with what your values are and who will give you advice that you really appreciate. And she's someone who, whatever is going on the business, like she's so smart. She could tell me anything on the business level, but I'm always like, on a personal, moral level, is this the right thing to do?
Yeah.
And having someone like that in your life is incredibly valuable. So yeah,
that's exciting. I'm inspired already by her.
Yeah, she just has this way as well of being a successful, not a pushover, like a determined, motivated businesswoman who's doing amazing things with her beautiful, beautiful juices, but also being soft at the same time, which as a woman is really hard. It's hard to find the balance between like exhibiting that strong, independent woman thing, but also being soft enough to be vulnerable and also maintaining your likability. Like, we navigate this very difficult balance between hard and soft, I think. We want to do the CEO, like those very masculine tendencies, but then we also want to be liked and we also want to be women because we're not men. It's hard, and she just does it really well.
I reckon you're kicking some serious goals too. So
thank
you so much. And thank you. You've inspired me so much. You've taught me a lot. And
my gosh,
thank you. I've done a lot of self-work and personal development myself, and I still learnt a lot from you. So well done. Thank you for being part of Things You Can't Unhear. And if you'd like to subscribe to the show, please do. And if you heard something on today's episode that you think someone else might like to hear, please share it. And make sure you follow Sarah's movements at A Spoonful of Sarah on Instagram. Thank you again. You've got a website too, don't you?
I have so many websites.
She's got 100 websites, but just find her on Google. She's there, Sarah Holloway. Thank you so much, everyone. Be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.